Hey guys, thanks for coming to the channel. Today I want to talk about when would you throw a big jig versus when you would throw a little jig. I'm generally talking about flipping and pitching and not necessarily a swim jig situation. So when would you throw the big jig and when would you throw the little jig? Well, let's put them side by side here. Big difference in size, right? And of course I don't have a trailer on this one at the moment. Well, the key is to understand what's going on in the body of water that you're fishing in. And the first thing that you need to decide when you're, trying to decide whether or not you're going to throw a big jig or a little jig is what is the size of the fish in the lake that you're fishing. If the lake that you're fishing has a bunch of little 1 and 1.5 pound fish, the big jig will catch those fish for sure. But it's probably not going to be the best tool for that particular situation. And it may be a situation where, it's got a bunch of little fish and every once in a while you can catch a better fish and you're just trying to catch a better fish, so you're going to throw the big jig. So that's probably the most important thing, is understanding what's available in the fishery that you're fishing. Now once you've decided that, the lake is fit for throwing a big jig because there's enough quality fish in the lake that a big jig would be something that the fish would react to, then you'd want to understand the other criteria basically that would dictate whether or not a big jig is going to be your best tool or not in that situation. So what are these other criteria? The difference between whether a big jig works better or a little jig works better. Well, it depends on the forage in your lake or the forage in your river. A lot of tidal rivers, for example, have a lot of small forage in it. A lot of bullhead minnows, a lot of small crawfish, a lot of glass minnows, and smaller type bait is more readily available to a tidal water bass a lot of times than some lakes. Now they also have bluegill and other fish too, but it generally suits a smaller jig better most of the time. Now there's days where the fish are feeding up early in the year when the bait is mostly all bigger still because nothing has spawned yet. The bigger jig is probably going to be more realistic to them, or they're feeding up for the spawn and they want a big meal. Let's just do a head-to-head. Big jig, dirty water. Little jig, clear water. Big jig, big fish. Little jig, little fish. Now understand, little jigs catch big fish too, and big jigs catch little fish, but we're talking in generalities now. Big jig, dirty water. Little jig, clear water. Big jig, pre-spawn, fall, winter. Little jig, post-spawn, summertime, lethargic fish. Big jig, not as much fishing pressure in the lake. Little jig, more fishing pressure in the lake. Big jig, low pressure approaching fronts, cloudy days, windy days, days when bass are more active. Little jig, high skies, high pressure, cold front, post-frontal situations, north winds. Big jig, generally deeper water or when you need more weight to punch through heavier stuff. Little jig, shallower water when you don't need the heavier weight, more open cover sometimes around dock poles, things like that. Big jig, when bluegill seem to be the most prevalent forage in the lake that you're fishing. Small jig, when bluegill are very small bluegill, or there's other smaller minnows that seem to be the most prevalent forage in the system that you're fishing. Big jig, when you're trophy hunting. Little jig, when you're just trying to fill out your limit. Big jig, when everybody's throwing a little jig. Little jig, when everybody's throwing a big jig. Basically, you're just giving the fish something that they're not used to seeing. So those are the scenarios where you'd want to throw a big jig or you want to throw a little jig. Here they are side by side for comparison again. Take these principles to the lake or the river that you fish on, and you will be a better fisherman. You know, I have a video out there also all about jigs posted right here that you can look at. We'll go into more detail about, you know, hook size, weed guard strength, the weight of the hook, different colors, different trailers, and all of those things that you should probably look at as a follow-up to this particular video to help you understand everything you need to know about jigs. Again, if you like my channel, you want to watch it on a regular basis, I have shorts that come out on a regular basis and about one video a week right now. Please hit the subscribe button, the like button, put a comment in the bottom. Helps me grow the channel. It'll help you. It'll help me. Thanks for watching and have a blessed day.